Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. AI technology has evolved extremely quickly. Just look at the spectacular growth of generative AI platforms like ChatGPT. But for all the benefits of this new technology, and there are many, there are also some major risks. Chief among them is the use of AI in cyberattacks, making every organisation in the world more vulnerable. It means a new approach to cybersecurity might be needed. I'm joined today by one of the world's leading experts in the space. Chris Lovejoy has worked as the General Manager of the Security Services Division at IBM, Global Cybersecurity Leader at EY, and as a member of the World Economic Forum's Centre for Cybersecurity. She's now the Global Security and Resilience Leader for Kyndryl, the world's largest provider of IT infrastructure services, and a great supporter of this podcast. Chris Lovejoy, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Where do you start on this topic? There is so much to talk about, but let's start with AI. Just how big is the cyber risk from AI?
It's emerging. I'd say we haven't seen the best of generative AI being used in cyber attacks just yet. However, we're beginning to see the first indications of the fun to come.
Okay, so what is it that you're seeing?
So for, a few years now, we've been talking about this concept of omni-channel marketing, which is, your ability to actually, log in, talk to somebody and text at the same time. Well, now imagine that attackers are using generative AI to create these very, very sophisticated, what we call phishing and social engineering campaigns. So once upon a time, you'd get an email and the email would say, I'm your boss and I want you to buy me a gift card. Well, the attacks have evolved now that you're going to get a message on your phone that it's going to sound exactly like your boss. And at the same time, you're going to get a text message. And at the same time, you're going to get an email. And oh, by the way, your colleagues at work are also going to get a phone call from your boss saying, hey, I just called Bill and I asked Bill to get me a gift card. Can you call him and remind him to get me a gift card? So that's what we call an omni-channel social engineering or phishing attack. And these are becoming more common. And what we're seeing is that, unfortunately, it's very, very hard to disregard as an end user, these kinds of attacks. And so we're seeing a lot of folks get caught up in them.
Okay, I mean, it's complex. I'd imagine that we probably need to rethink the way we approach security as a result of it.
Oh, absolutely. I think, historically, the way to approach it is, it's like taking the model that we use for immunizations. It's a herd mentality. You're never going to get everybody to not click. But if you could limit the damage by limiting the number of people that double clicked, you'd get somewhere. Well, unfortunately, this particular attack makes phishing education, the do not double click education, not as useful as it has been before. And so we really do need to turn to technologies and the capabilities that keep, dangerous forms of malware like ransomware from propagating inside our organizations or, even affecting us as individual consumers.
Okay, so it's less about educating end users. It's more about doing something at the source of the problem. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it's a combination of both. Education will never go away, so you have to be very wary of what you could double click on, but also recognize that, there is a good probability that you're going to be scammed and you're going to fall for it. And so the controls in the background, like technology controls or identity theft protection, those really should be something you invest in.
Okay, your title, Chris, is Security and Resilience Leader at Kyndryl. It's not a typical title, shall we say. Is it all about becoming more resilient and responding the right way to attacks? Is that kind of why that's your job title?
Absolutely. In fact, we're seeing this change in the marketplace generally is that, security has actually been largely about, kind of that guns, gates, and guards of we're going to protect everything and everybody from, the bad folks out there. And it just doesn't work that way anymore. So the market is really changing and titles are changing with it. Now people are talking about this concept of business resilience. And the concept is a lot of bad things can happen to disrupt or otherwise impact negatively our digitally enabled business, our digitally enabled lives. And so a resilience officer or a leader in this space is really about helping organizations and prioritizing what to care about, because you can't protect everything. So identifying what I should be investing in, where I should be investing, why I should be investing, and making sure that whether it is a fire or flood, natural disaster, a cyber attack, a hardware failure, software failure, network outage, whatever it can be, the job of somebody like me is really thinking through, how do I protect my organization from all of those bad things, and making sure that I'm putting my investments in the right place.
Is this something that is it prevalent across all businesses, or are there some particular types of organizations at particular risk? And I suppose I'm coming back more specifically to the AI related cyber attacks.
It's interesting because a lot of organizations I talk to say, I'm too small, I'm not important enough. But the reality is that the bad guys, the bad actors tend to go after the smaller organizations who are less able to fund good security protections. They're the weakest link. So while you would think that if I'm a major brand name bank, I'd be the target, it's really not. It's the supply chain partners. It's the small technology organizations that are building and developing technology for that bigger organization. It's the organization that is providing shipping services on behalf of a large packaged goods manufacturer. It's that kind of institution that's the target. It might be the accounting firm or the law firm. It's those that act as kind of the back door into the bigger organization that I really worry about.
Stay with me, Chris. We'll be back in a minute. I'm speaking to Chris Lovejoy, Global Security and Resilience Leader for Kyndryl, a supporter of this podcast. Okay, so that's AI we've sort of been focusing on there. What are some of the other key security risks for organisations going forward?
And if I look at this particular marketplace, one of the biggest issues right now is legacy technology. If you look at, on one pole, you've got India, and India has been engaged in, really extraordinary amounts of innovation. On the other side, you have some nation states like Japan, where there is a concern about the risk associated with modernization. I would put Australia in the middle. And so, the problem with Australia is that during the COVID period, all the technology investment went into enabling new ways of working for clients and new ways of, communicating with employees. This was done on top of a very, very large real estate of legacy infrastructure. And those modernization programs that happened pre-COVID, it was really taking legacy infrastructure and putting it on cloud, not necessarily thinking about security complexity that is added by taking a legacy application, putting it on cloud. So the dynamic that we have here is we have a lot of new stuff that was introduced during COVID that wasn't really properly secured because we didn't think it was going to go away. Then we have a lot of legacy infrastructure that was not securable because it is so old. So at this point in time, we've got a situation where lots of legacy, lots of new stuff that hasn't necessarily been secured, CISOs that are under a lot of budgetary pressure because hardware software costs have been going up so much that the net impact of inflation, despite the fact that their budgets are going up, has been a net decrease in budget by about 1%. So it's a pretty tough situation for organizations in Australia to be in right now. And so, one of the recommendations that we have is going to be strange from a security person, but is not necessarily to spend the money in securing the infrastructure, but is really in modernizing the right way so that security and resiliency can be achieved through the modernization objectives.
I mean, it's quite frightening what you're talking about. Do you think boards and management are across this idea that they just have to do something, particularly about their legacy systems, which aren't fit for purpose anymore?
I think in the public companies, those that are listed, the awareness is becoming a bit more acute because, particularly within the critical infrastructure, there has been some notifications that have gone out, which suggest that the non-executive directors will be personally liable for failure to implement controls. In other jurisdictions outside of Australia, it is becoming much better known because in the US and then through some of the legislation that's coming out of Europe and the UK, the obligation for non-executive directors more broadly to attest to cybersecurity as if they're attesting to Sarbanes-Oxley, these are hitting the books as well. So I think that in pockets of the world, there is a better understanding. More generally in Australia, though, I would say the answer is no. Boards of directors tend to think about it as somebody else's problem. And if it is somebody's problem, it's the problem of that security person that's somewhere buried in the organization that has a cape and is supposed to protect the organization. So a long way of answering. In some pockets, yes, but in the broader marketplace, no, boards really don't understand the issue, nor do they understand their governance responsibilities in the issue.
And I presume businesses aren't really equipped to do it either. I mean, presumably that's what Kyndryl's all about too, helping businesses do this.
Yeah, I think there are any number of product companies out there. I think, if you look at the marketplace today, I mentioned before, a lot of organizations will buy security because they've had a crisis or there's a compliance requirement. And what that's led to is this, the auditor comes in or the crisis manager comes in and says, you need to buy this to fix the bleeding. So people will spend as little money as they possibly can to solve that problem that's staring them in the face. And what that's led to is a big market with lots of fragmented technologies that don't really fit together. So I think, what's really interesting, it's happening now, is the recession is actually had a positive side, or not recession, but, some of the economic headwinds has had a positive side for us. In so much companies are saying, to solve the security problem, I need to simplify. I've got too many tools. I've got too much technology. I've got too many legacy systems. So the time is for us to really take a step back, build an enterprise strategy and architecture for how we want to move forward, simplify the number of vendors, simplify the number of tools, and then make sure that we're building for the future with security and resiliency in mind.
Chris, thank you for talking to Fear and Greed.
Thank you. I'm really thrilled to have been here.
That's Chris Lovejoy, Global Security and Resilience Leader for Kyndryl, a supporter of this podcast. This is the Fear and Greed Business Interview. Join us every morning for the full episode of Fear and Greed, Australia's best business podcast. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.